I am Asher, 34 years old, and my own father pushed me down a flight of stairs because I refused to give my daughter to my brother for a paycheck. Before I tell you about the police cars, the handcuffs, and the look on my father's face when he realized his life was over, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. I read every single one, and honestly, knowing you're here helps me get through retelling this. That night still replays in my head like a bad movie on a loop. The smell of lemon polish and old coffee. The way the light hit the dust motes dancing in the hallway. And the sound of my daughter, Lily, screaming. She was only 5 months old. I was lying at the bottom of the stairs. My back felt like it was on fire. My wrist was bent at an angle that made me nauseous just looking at it. But I wasn't looking at my wrist. I was looking up. At the top of the stairs stood my father, Silas. His face wasn't filled with regret. It wasn't filled with shock. It was twisted in a snarl of pure, unadulterated rage. "The inheritance is his," he screamed, his voice cracking. "Get rid of that child. Enjoy my new story." My mother, Martha, stood in the doorway of the dining room. She didn't move. She didn't rush to help me. She just watched, her hands clasped together like she was at church, witnessing a sermon she agreed with. But before the ambulance came, before the world came crashing down on them, you need to understand something. You need to understand that this didn't start on that staircase. It started years ago. It started with a red Porsche and a rusty bicycle. I grew up in a house where love was a currency, and I was perpetually bankrupt. My brother, Julian, was the golden child. He was 2 years older, louder, more demanding, and in my parents' eyes, perfect. I was Asher, the quiet one, the one who did his homework without being asked, the one who fixed the leaky faucet because Dad couldn't be bothered, the invisible one. I remember my 16th birthday. I woke up with that buzzing excitement you get when you're a kid, thinking maybe, just maybe, this year would be different. I went downstairs. My parents were in the kitchen. "Happy birthday, Asher," my mom said, not looking up from her crossword puzzle. "Thanks, Mom," I said. My dad pointed to the garage. "Your present is out there." My heart jumped. Maybe a car? A used one, something simple to get to school? I ran out to the garage. There, leaning against the wall, was Julian's old mountain bike. The chain was rusted. The front tire was flat. The seat had a tear in it where Julian had crashed it 3 years ago. I thought Julian threw this out," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Don't be ungrateful," my dad said, walking up behind me. "It just needs a little grease. Builds character." 2 years later, Julian turned 18. We walked out to the driveway, and there it was. A brand new Porsche 911, cherry red. A big white bow on the hood. Julian screamed like a banshee. My dad was beaming, clapping him on the back. My mom was crying tears of joy. "He deserves it," my dad told me later, when he caught me looking at the car. "He has potential, Asher. He's going places. You need to understand your role. You're the support system. Julian is the star." That was the dynamic. Julian was the star. I was the stagehand. When it came time for college, the pattern held. Julian went to a private university. Tuition, room, board, fraternity dues, spring break trips to Cabo. My parents paid for it all. Over $150,000. They dipped into their retirement. They took out a second mortgage. "It's an investment," my dad said. When I got into state college, I brought my acceptance letter to the dinner table. "That's nice, honey," Mom said. "Pass the peas." "I was wondering about tuition," I said. Dad sighed, putting down his fork. "Asher, we've stretched ourselves thin for Julian. You know how expensive his program is. You're smart. You can get loans. Maybe work part-time. It'll be good for you. Teaches responsibility." So I did. I took out loans. I worked nights at a burger joint, coming home smelling like grease and onions, studying until my eyes burned. I graduated with $30,000 in debt. Julian graduated with 0 debt and a degree in communications that he never used. But I built a life. I became a software engineer. I met Sarah. Sarah is the best thing that ever happened to me. She saw me. When I told her about my family, she didn't tell me to forgive and forget. She got angry. She defended me. We got married in a small ceremony. My parents came, but they left early because Julian had a crisis. His girlfriend of the month had broken up with him. Then came Lily. When Lily was born, everything changed for me. Holding her in the hospital, looking at her tiny fingers, I made a vow. I would never let her feel invisible. I would never let her feel like second best. My parents barely acknowledged her. They sent a card. No visit. No gift. Just a card signed Grandma and Grandpa. I thought we were done with them. I thought I had finally escaped the orbit of the Chambers family. I was wrong. Last week my phone rang. It was my mother. Her voice was tight, urgent. Asher, you need to come home Friday night. For dinner. I can't, Mom. Sarah and I have plans. I said. Cancel them, she snapped. Then her voice softened. That fake sweetness that always made my skin crawl. Please, Asher. It's important. It's about your grandmother Beatrice. It's a family emergency. Grandmother Beatrice. That was the only name that could get me back in that house. Grandma Beatrice was the only person in that family who had ever been kind to me. She used to sneak me candy when I was little. She'd listen to me talk about my science projects when everyone else walked away. But 3 years ago, my dad put her in Sycamore Ridge assisted living. He told us she had severe dementia. He said she didn't recognize anyone, that she was violent, that it was better if we didn't visit and upset her. I believed him. I was busy with my career, with Sarah, with the baby. I let him handle it. I've carried the guilt of that every day. Is she okay? I asked. Did something happen to Grandma? Just come to dinner, Asher. We need to discuss her estate. 7 p.m. Don't be late. She hung up. I looked at Sarah. She was feeding Lily in the rocking chair. What is it? Sarah asked. They want us to come to dinner. About Grandma's estate. Sarah frowned. Do you want to go? If it's about Grandma, I have to, I said. But I have a bad feeling about this, Sarah. A really bad feeling. We pulled into the driveway of my childhood home on Friday at 6:55 p.m. The house looked different. The peeling paint I remembered was gone, replaced by fresh beige vinyl siding. The lawn was manicured, and the kitchen, I could see through the window, had new granite countertops. They must have come into some money, Sarah whispered as we walked up the path. Yeah, I said. Maybe Julian finally got a job. We both knew that wasn't likely. Julian opened the door. He looked terrible. His eyes were bloodshot, his skin sallow. He was wearing a polo shirt that was too tight, straining against a beer gut he hadn't had in college. Hey, little brother, he said, not stepping aside to let us in. Brought the kid, huh? Her name is Lily, I said, pushing past him. The house smelled of expensive pot roast and tension. My dad was sitting at the head of the table. He didn't stand up. Sit down, he said. No hello. No asking how we were. We sat. My mom brought out a platter of meat, her hands shaking slightly. She wouldn't meet my eyes. So, I said, cutting to the chase. What about Grandma? Dad wiped his mouth with a napkin. He placed a manila folder on the table. As you know, he began, his voice measuring every word. Grandmother Beatrice's condition has deteriorated. But before she lost her faculties, she set up a trust. I leaned forward. Okay. The trust has a specific clause, Dad continued. The family estate, this house, and the investment portfolio goes to the grandson who demonstrates the most responsibility. Specifically, the grandson who is the primary guardian of a minor child. I froze. I looked at Julian. He was staring at the tablecloth, picking at a loose thread. Well, I said slowly, I have a child. Julian doesn't. Exactly, Dad said. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Which creates a problem. The estate is valued at roughly $2 million. Julian needs that money, Asher. He's had some setbacks. Setbacks? I laughed. A short, bitter sound. You mean gambling? Or just general incompetence? Watch your mouth, Julian snapped, his head snapping up. Here is the solution, Dad said, sliding a document across the table. I picked it up. It was a legal document. Transfer of temporary guardianship. What is this? I asked. It's simple, Dad said, waving his hand like he was swatting a fly. You sign temporary guardianship of Lily over to Julian. Just on paper. For 6 months. Long enough for the trust to execute and the assets to be transferred to Julian. Then we transfer guardianship back to you. No one gets hurt. Julian gets his inheritance. You go back to your life. The room went silent. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. I could hear Sarah's sharp intake of breath beside me. You're joking, I said. I am deadly serious, Dad said. You want me to give my daughter to him? I pointed at Julian. To a man who can't even take care of a goldfish? Just so he can get money he didn't earn. It's just paperwork, Asher. Mom chimed in, her voice shrill. Don't be so dramatic. Family helps family. Julian is in trouble. He needs this. You have a good job. You have Sarah. You're fine. Julian needs a leg up. A leg up. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. You bought him a Porsche. You paid for his college. You've been giving him a leg up his entire life. And now you want my daughter. Sit down, Dad roared. He slammed his fist on the table. The silverware rattled. Lily started to cry in her carrier. No, I said. My voice was shaking, but not with fear. With rage. I'm not signing anything. This is fraud. It's disgusting. And frankly, it's insane. You have until September 19th, Dad said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl. That's when the probate hearing is. You sign those papers, Asher, or you will regret it. Is that a threat? Sarah asked, standing up beside me, clutching Lily's carrier. It's a promise, Dad said. We walked out. I didn't look back. But as I strapped Lily into her car seat, I looked at the house. I saw my father standing in the window watching us. And for the first time in my life, I didn't just see a disappointed father. I saw a predator. We drove home in silence for the first 10 minutes. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. They're crazy, Sarah whispered finally. Asher, they are actually crazy. I know, I said. But they're also desperate. And desperate people do dangerous things. I didn't know then how right I was. I didn't know about the Rolls-Royce hidden in the garage. I didn't know about the nurse named Patrice. And I certainly didn't know that my father was capable of trying to kill me. But the storm was coming. And I was standing right in its path. The weekend after that dinner felt like a siege. We unplugged the landline. I blocked my parents' numbers on my cell. But they found ways. Julian started texting me from burner apps. Don't be selfish. Bro, Mom is crying because of you. Just sign the paper. It's just a piece of paper. It wasn't just a piece of paper. It was my daughter. It was her safety. It was my integrity. Monday morning, I went to work, but I couldn't focus. I stared at lines of code that looked like gibberish. My mind kept drifting back to that dining room table. The way my mother looked at me. Not with love, but with annoyance, like I was an appliance that had stopped working. Family helps family. That was their mantra. But in the Chambers household, family only ever meant Julian. At lunch, my phone buzzed. It was Sarah. Julian is here, the text read. At the coffee shop. Sarah worked part-time at a boutique bakery downtown. I felt a cold spike of adrenaline. I ran out of the office, jumped in my car, and sped toward the bakery. When I got there, I saw him. Julian was leaning against the counter, charming the barista, or trying to. He looked better than he had on Friday, but there was still that jittery energy about him. Sarah was behind the register, her arms crossed, looking furious. I slammed the door open. Get out. Julian turned, a smirk plastered on his face. Asher, relax. I'm just buying a scone. Blueberry. Sarah's favorite, right? Get out, Julian. Now. I stepped between him and my wife. Look, man. Julian said, holding his hands up in mock surrender. Dad's really intense about this. He's under a lot of pressure. You know how he gets. If you just sign the thing, he'll back off. I'll even give you a cut. 10 grand? How does that sound? 10 grand for a signature. You think you can buy my daughter for $10,000? I stepped closer. I was taller than him now. Stronger. He wasn't the captain of the football team anymore. He was a desperate, middle-aged loser. It's not buying her, Julian hissed, his voice dropping. It's a loophole. God, why do you always have to be such a Boy Scout? You think you're better than us? Yes, I said. I do. Get out. If you come near Sarah or Lily again, I'm calling the cops. Julian's smirk vanished. His eyes went flat. You're making a mistake, Asher. A big one. Dad isn't going to let this go. And neither are the people I owe. He turned and walked out. The people I owe. That phrase stuck in my head. I watched him get into his car, a beat-up Honda Civic. Where was the Porsche? Probably sold years ago to pay off a debt. Are you okay? I asked Sarah. She nodded, but her hands were trembling. He threatened to come to our house, Asher. He said if we didn't cooperate, they'd sue us for grandparents' rights. Can they do that? I don't know, I said, but we're going to find out. That night I started digging. I pulled up public records. I looked for liens against my parents' house. I looked for court cases involving Julian. I found plenty on Julian. 2 DUIs, a small claims court judgment for unpaid rent, but nothing on my parents. On paper, Silas and Martha Chambers were upstanding citizens. Wednesday evening, I had to drive past their neighborhood to pick up a prescription for Lily. I told myself not to look, but I couldn't help it. I slowed down as I passed the house. The garage door was open, just a crack, about 2 feet. My dad was inside. He was polishing something. I pulled over a few houses down and watched in the rearview mirror. He was moving a chamois cloth over a fender. A massive, gleaming, silver fender. It wasn't the Honda. It wasn't his old Ford truck. It was a Rolls-Royce Cullinan. I blinked. I must be seeing things. That car cost more than my house. More than 2 of my houses. My dad was a facilities manager at a community college. He made $60,000, maybe $70,000 a year. Mom was a retired librarian. Where the hell did he get a Rolls-Royce? I drove home, my mind racing. The inheritance. Was it possible Grandma Beatrice had already died? Or given them the money? But if they had the money, why did they need Julian to get the house? Why were they so desperate? I got home and told Sarah. He has a Rolls-Royce in the garage, Sarah. A Cullinan. That's impossible, she said. Unless what? Unless he's stealing it, she said. Or he's already stolen the money. The next day, Thursday, my phone rang while I was in a meeting. Unknown number. I usually ignore them, but something told me to answer. Hello. Is this Asher Chambers? A woman's voice. Soft. Hesitant. Yes. Who is this? My name is Patrice. Patrice Okafor. I'm a nurse at Sycamore Ridge. My stomach dropped. Is it Grandma? Is she okay? She's physically fine, Patrice said. She lowered her voice. Mr. Chambers, I'm not supposed to be making this call. I could lose my job, but couldn't sleep. I met your grandmother 3 weeks ago when I started here. Okay. Your father, she paused. He has specific instructions in her file. No visitors. No phone calls. He told the administration she has severe paranoid dementia and becomes violent if she sees family members other than him. That's what he told us, I said. Mr. Chambers, Patrice said, her voice firming up. Your grandmother does not have dementia. She is sharp as a tack. She plays chess with the other residents and wins. She reads the Wall Street Journal every morning. She knows what your father is doing. I stood up, walking out of the conference room. What is he doing? He's isolating her, Patrice said. He's cut her off from the world so no one can hear what she has to say. She told me he's stealing from her. and she told me to find you. She remembered your number. She said, "Find Asher. He's the only one who isn't rotten." I felt tears prick my eyes. "Can I see her?" "Not officially," Patrice said. "But your father works days, right? Come tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. I'll be on the East Wing duty. I'll sneak you in through the garden entrance." "I'll be there," I said. I hung up. My hand was shaking. My grandmother wasn't crazy. My father had locked her away. He had stolen her voice. And now he was trying to steal everything else. I went home and told Sarah. We packed a bag. We didn't know what was going to happen, but we knew we were going to war. That night I barely slept. I kept thinking about the rusty bike, the way my dad looked at Julian with such pride, and at me with such indifference. It wasn't just favoritism. It was a pathology. He needed Julian to be the success so badly that he was willing to destroy everyone else to make it happen. He was willing to gaslight his own mother. He was willing to exploit his granddaughter. Friday morning, 9:30 a.m. I parked my car 2 blocks away from Sycamore Ridge. I wore a baseball cap and sunglasses. I felt like a criminal, sneaking in to see my own grandmother. Patrice was waiting by the garden gate. She was young, maybe late 20s, with kind eyes and a nervous demeanor. "Quickly," she whispered. "The administrator is in a meeting, but we have to be fast." She led me down a back hallway that smelled of antiseptic and lavender. We stopped at room 204. "She's waiting," Patrice said. I opened the door. Grandma Beatrice was sitting in a recliner by the window. She looked older, frielier than I remembered. Her hair was completely white now, but when she turned to look at me, her blue eyes were clear, sharp, intense. "Asher," she said. Her voice was strong. "Grandma," I choked out. I crossed the room and knelt beside her chair. She grabbed my hand. Her grip was surprisingly firm. "I knew you'd come," she said. "I told that nice girl, Patrice. Asher will come." "I'm so sorry, Grandma," I said. "I didn't know. Dad told us." "I know what Silas told you," she snapped. "He told you I was mad. He told the world I was mad. It's the oldest trick in the book, Asher. If you want to steal a woman's money, first you steal her credibility." "The money," I said. "He wanted us to sign over Lily to Julian. He said it was for the trust." Grandma Beatrice let out a harsh laugh. "The trust? There is no clause about a child in my trust, Asher. I wrote that trust 20 years ago. It splits everything 50-50 between you and Julian. Simple. Fair." "Then why?" "Because he changed it," she said. "Or he thinks he did. He brought a lawyer in here, a slimy man named Glenn Fisk. They tried to get me to sign a modification. I refused. But Silas has my power of attorney. He declared me incompetent. He's been using my money like it's his own personal piggy bank." She leaned in close. "He thinks he's clever, but he's sloppy. He's been skimming the rent checks from my properties. I have 6 rental units in the city. They generate over $8,000 a month. He's only been depositing $3,000 into my account to pay the facility fees. The rest? Gone." "The Rolls-Royce," I whispered. "What?" "He has a Rolls-Royce in the garage." Grandma's eyes widened, then narrowed into slits. "The fool. He always did have champagne taste on a beer budget. He's spending my money before I'm even dead." "We have to get you out of here," I said. "Not yet," she said. "If you take me out now, he'll call the police. He has legal guardianship over me right now. We need to break that first." "How?" "We need proof," she said. "I need an independent cognitive evaluation. A doctor who isn't on Silas's payroll. And we need those bank records." "I can get the records," I said. "I have a friend in forensic accounting. If we have your permission." "You have it," she said. "And call Warren Healy. He was my lawyer before Silas fired him. He's honest." She squeezed my hand again. "He's going to try to force you, Asher. He's desperate. Julian is in deep trouble with loan sharks. That's why they need the bulk of the estate immediately. They can't wait for me to die." They need to trigger the distribution clause they faked. September 19th, I said. That's the deadline he gave me. Then that's the day we end this, Grandma said. You bring the papers, bring Warren, and bring the police. I kissed her forehead. I love you, Grandma. I love you too, my invisible boy, she said, smiling sadly. Now go. Make them see you. I left the room, my heart pounding. I had a mission. I wasn't just fighting for my daughter anymore. I was fighting for the matriarch of this family. I was fighting to burn down the web of lies my father had spent a lifetime spinning. But as I drove away, I didn't know that my father was already one step ahead. He knew I hadn't signed the papers yet, and his patience was running out. The week leading up to September 19th was a blur of covert operations. I felt less like a software engineer and more like a private investigator. First, I called Warren Healy. When I told him what was happening, his voice dropped an octave. I never believed Beatrice was incompetent, Warren said. Silas sent me a letter 2 years ago terminating my services. It was signed by him using his power of attorney. I tried to visit her, but I was blocked at the door. We need to get her evaluated, I said, and we need to prove the fraud. Warren moved fast. He arranged for a geriatric psychiatrist, Dr. Salazar, to visit Sycamore Ridge under the guise of a state inspection auditor. Patrice helped facilitate it. 2 days later, Warren called me. We have the report. Dr. Salazar says Beatrice is fully cognitively intact. She scored 29 out of 30 on the evaluation. The only thing she missed was the day of the week, which, frankly, I miss sometimes. That's enough to revoke the power of attorney? It's enough to get an emergency hearing, Warren said. But we need the financial evidence to nail him for criminal charges. Did you get the bank statements? I had. Using Grandma's old login information, which she remembered perfectly, I had accessed her accounts. I compared them with the property tax records and rental agreements she told me about. The math was sickening. Every month, $5,200 was missing, transferred to a holding company called SC Management. I looked up the registration for SC Management. The registered agent was Silas Chambers. Over 3 years, he had siphoned off nearly $190,000. And that was just the rent. There were withdrawals from her investment accounts too. Home repairs, consulting fees, and then I found the check. A cashier's check for $410,000 issued 6 months ago. The payee? Luxury Motors of Lehigh Valley. He hadn't just stolen the rent money. He had liquidated a bond to buy that Rolls-Royce. I sat in my home office, staring at the screen, feeling physically ill. He was robbing his mother blind while she sat in a room with no phone, thinking nobody cared about her. We have him, I told Sarah, showing her the spreadsheet. We have to call the police now, she said. No, I said. Warren says if we tip our hand too early, Silas might destroy evidence or try to move the remaining assets. We need to catch him in the act. He wants a signature on September 19th? I'll give him a meeting. It's dangerous, Asher, Sarah said, looking at Lily sleeping in her crib. I won't let anything happen to us, I promised. But we have to finish this. For Grandma. The harassment from my family ramped up. My mom called Sarah's cell phone. You're ruining this family, she hissed. Asher is stubborn, but you're a mother. You should understand doing whatever it takes for your child. Julian is my child. Help me help him. By stealing my child? Sarah shot back. Don't call me again, Martha. Julian showed up at my house on Tuesday night. He stood on the sidewalk, pacing, looking at our windows. I watched him from the dark living room. He looked manic. He kicked my garbage can over before getting into his car and speeding off. He's unraveling, I told Sarah. Good, she said. Let him unravel. But the scariest moment came on Wednesday. I was at the grocery store. I came out to the parking lot and saw a note tucked under my windshield wiper. No words, just a photo. It was a photo of Lily, taken from a distance while she was in her stroller at the park with Sarah. My blood ran cold. They were stalking us. I called Warren immediately. This is escalating, Warren said. We need police protection for the meeting on Friday. If we bring police, they'll clam up, I said. We need them to admit it. We need them to present the fraudulent papers. That's the intent to defraud. That seals the case. Okay, Warren said. Here's the plan. I'll be parked down the street with Patrice and your grandmother. Yes, I'm getting her out. I have the emergency court order signed by a judge this morning. We're breaking her out at 5 p.m. We'll be at your parents' house by 6 p.m. You go in. Get them to talk. Record it. If things go south, you text me. One word. Now. And the police? Officer Miller is an old friend. He'll be on standby 2 blocks away. Once we have the confession, or if there's any violence, he moves in. Thursday night, the night before the deadline, I couldn't sleep. I sat in Lily's nursery, watching the rise and fall of her chest. I was terrified, not of my father, but of failing. What if something went wrong? What if he had a gun? But then I thought about Grandma Beatrice alone in that room for 3 years. I thought about Julian's smirk. I thought about the Rolls-Royce bought with stolen money while I paid off student loans. I kissed Lily's forehead. Daddy's going to fix it, I whispered. Friday, September 19th. The air was thick and humid. The sky was a bruised purple color, promising a storm. Sarah and I drove to my parents' house. We brought Lily. We had to. Leaving her with a sitter felt unsafe after the photo. And part of me wanted them to see her. To see the human being they were trying to trade like a stock option. We pulled up at 6 p.m. The Rolls-Royce was nowhere to be seen. The garage was closed. The house looked normal. Perfect suburban lie. I checked my phone. Warren texted. In position. Down the block. Grandma is with us. She's ready. I took a deep breath. I taped a small voice recorder to the inside of my jacket pocket. Ready? I asked Sarah. No, she said. But let's do it. We walked up the path. The front door opened before we even knocked. It was my mother. She was wearing a floral dress and pearls, her hair perfectly coiffed. She smiled, but her eyes were dead. You came, she said. I knew you'd do the right thing. We're here to talk, I said. We walked into the dining room. The table was set, crystal glasses, silverware, and in the center the manila folder. Silas stood by the window. He turned as we entered. He looked bigger than I remembered. Or maybe I just felt smaller. Asher, he said. He nodded at Sarah. Sarah. He didn't look at Lily. Julian was sitting at the table, bouncing his leg. He looked sweaty. Did you sign it? Julian asked immediately. Hello to you too, Julian, I said, sitting down. Cut the crap, Silas said. He walked over and placed his hand on the folder. We don't need small talk. We need a signature. Today is the 19th. The trust executes tomorrow. I have some questions first, I said. Questions? Silas's jaw tightened. What questions? It's straightforward. I want to know about the clause, I said. Why would Grandma write a clause about a great-grandchild? She didn't even know I was going to have Lily when she wrote the will. She amended it, Silas said, before she got sick. She wanted to ensure the family line continued. And the house? I asked. Why does the guardian get the house? Because raising a child takes resources, Mom said, pouring water with a trembling hand. It's for the child's benefit. So if I sign Lily over to Julian, I said, looking at my brother, you're going to use the money to raise her? You're going to change diapers? You're going to pay for her school? Julian laughed nervously. Yeah, sure. Whatever. I mean, you'll still do the heavy lifting, obviously. I'll just be the legal guardian. On paper. So it's fraud, I said clearly. You're asking me to commit fraud against the estate. It's not fraud. Silas slammed his hand on the table. It's asset protection. The government takes 40% if we don't do this. Do you want the government to have Grandma's money? Or your brother? I'd rather the government have it than a thief, I said. The room went deadly quiet. What did you call me? Silas whispered. I stood up. I know about the Rolls-Royce, Dad. I know about the missing rent money. I know about SC management. Silas's face went from red to a ghostly white, then to a dark, vein-popping purple. You've been snooping, he hissed. I've been investigating, I said. And I know Grandma isn't crazy. I visited her. Julian jumped up, knocking his chair over. You talked to the old hag? She's not a hag, I said. She's the only decent person in this family. And she told me everything. Silas moved around the table. He was moving fast for a 60-year-old man. He blocked the exit to the living room. You're not leaving, he said. We're done here, I said. Sarah, get Lily. Sarah grabbed the car seat. I stepped between her and my father. Get out of my way, Dad, I said. You ungrateful little brat, Silas spat. I gave you life. I put a roof over your head. And you try to ruin me? You ruined yourself, I said. I tried to step around him. He grabbed my shoulder. His grip was like iron. Sign the papers, he screamed. Sign them now. No, I shouted. He shoved me. Hard. I stumbled back. Sarah screamed. Get rid of it, he yelled, pointing at Lily. Get rid of that child. The inheritance is his. It belongs to Julian. He lunged at me again. We were at the top of the hallway stairs. I tried to twist away to keep my body between him and Sarah and the baby. He grabbed my lapels and threw his weight forward. I felt my feet leave the floor. I felt gravity take over. And then I was falling. Time slows down when you fall. It's a cliché, but it's true. I saw the ceiling spin. I saw the horrified look on Sarah's face. I saw my father's hands still outstretched, pushing air where I had just been. My first thought wasn't pain. It was Lily. Was she safe? Sarah had her. Sarah was behind me. I was the only one falling. Thank God. My back hit the edge of a step. A sharp, cracking sound echoed in my ears. I tumbled. Shoulders, hip, head. The world was a blur of beige walls and wooden banisters. I instinctively threw my arm out to catch myself, to stop the descent. My hand caught a baluster. My momentum didn't stop. Snap. A blinding white-hot pain shot up my right arm. I screamed. I hit the landing at the bottom of the stairs with a thud that knocked the wind out of me. For a second, there was silence. Then chaos. Asher! Sarah shrieked. She was running down the stairs, clutching Lily, who was now wailing at the top of her lungs. I tried to sit up. The room spun. My wrist was dangling at an unnatural angle. My back throbbed with a dull, heavy agony. Stay back! Silas yelled from the top of the stairs. He was panting, his face red and sweaty. He looked like a madman. Don't you touch him, Sarah. He needs to learn. Sarah reached me. She was crying. Oh my God, Asher. Your arm. I'm okay, I gasped, though I definitely wasn't. The phone. Text Warren. Now. Sarah fumbled for her phone with one hand, holding Lily tight with the other. Don't you dare. Mom screamed from the dining room. Don't you call anyone. We can handle this internally. Internally. I choked out a laugh that turned into a cough. He just threw me down the stairs, Mom. You slipped, Silas yelled. He started coming down the stairs, heavy footsteps thumping like doom approaching. You slipped because you're clumsy. Just like you're clumsy with money. Just like you're clumsy with your life. He reached the bottom. He stood over me. He looked enormous. Give me the phone, Sarah, he demanded, holding out his hand. Sarah stepped back, shielding me. No, give it to me. He lunged for her. Now, I yelled at Sarah. Sarah hit send. Silas grabbed Sarah's arm. Lily screamed louder. Get your hands off my wife. I roared. I tried to stand up, ignoring the screaming pain in my wrist. I used my good arm to push myself up. Adrenaline is a hell of a drug. I stood there, swaying, holding my broken wrist against my chest. You want the papers signed? I spat, blood in my mouth. I must have bitten my tongue. I'll sign them in hell before I give you a dime. Julian appeared at the top of the stairs. He looked terrified. Dad, maybe we should stop. He's hurt. Shut up, Julian. Silas didn't take his eyes off me. He's faking. He's always been dramatic. I'm calling 911, Sarah said, her voice shaking but defiant. She raised the phone to her ear. Silas's eyes went wide. He reached into his pocket. For a second, I thought he had a gun. My heart stopped. He pulled out a pocket knife. A small, silver folding knife he used to open boxes. He flicked it open. Put the phone down, he said. His voice was trembling now. He wasn't just angry. He was scared. He knew he had crossed a line, and instead of backing down, he was doubling down. Dad, what are you doing? Julian screamed. Put the knife away. They're going to ruin us. Silas shouted, spit flying from his mouth. After everything I did, the car, the house, I did it for us, for the family name. You did it for yourself, I yelled. You bought a Rolls-Royce while Grandma rotted in a cell. She's useless, Silas screamed. She's old. She doesn't need the money. I need it. I deserve it. He took a step towards Sarah. I didn't think. I just moved. I threw my body between him and my family. I braced myself for the blade. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of heavy pounding on the front door echoed through the house like gunshots. Open up. Police. Silas froze. The knife wavered in his hand. The front door, which Mom had locked, shuddered under the force of a battering ram. Crash. The door flew open, splinters of wood flying. And then the cavalry arrived. But it wasn't just the police. Walking in first, stepping over the debris of the door frame, was a man in a gray suit. Warren Healy. Behind him was Officer Miller, hand on his holster, looking grim. And behind them, leaning on a cane but walking with her head held high, was Grandmother Beatrice. The look on my father's face, I will never forget it as long as I live. It wasn't just fear. It was the look of a man seeing a ghost he had buried alive, returning to drag him down to hell. He dropped the knife, clattered on the hardwood floor. Mother? He stammered. Grandma Beatrice stopped in the middle of the hallway. She looked at me, leaning against the wall, clutching my broken arm. She looked at Sarah, weeping in the corner with Lily. And then she looked at Silas. Her eyes were cold, colder than I had ever seen them. Hello, Silas, she said. Her voice was calm, steady, and terrifying. I thought you were. Silas backed away until he hit the banister. You thought I was what? Grandma stepped closer. Crazy? Forgotten? Dead? No, You thought you could erase me, she said. You thought you could lock me away and spend my life's work on toys for yourself and your failure of a son. She glanced up at Julian, who was cowering at the top of the stairs. Officer Miller stepped forward. Silas Chambers, put your hands on your head. Wait! Mom rushed out from the dining room. Wait, officer! There's been a mistake. It was an accident. Asher fell. We were just trying to help him up. We heard everything, Martha, Warren Healy said, holding up his phone. I've been on the line with Sarah for the last 3 minutes. We heard the threats. We heard the assault. And we definitely heard Silas admit to stealing the money. Mom's face crumbled. She looked at Dad, then at Julian, and finally, she sank to the floor, covering her face with her hands. Asher, Grandma said, turning to me, are you all right? I think my arm is broken, Grandma, I said, trying to smile. But I'm okay. Get the paramedics, Officer Miller barked into his radio. He walked over to Silas. Turn around. Silas didn't move. He was staring at Grandma. Why? He whispered. I'm your son. Grandma Beatrice didn't blink. And he is my grandson, she pointed at me. And that baby is my great-granddaughter. You didn't just steal my money, Silas. You tried to destroy my legacy. You tried to sell a child. She took a deep breath, and then she delivered the blow that shattered him completely. Gordon, I raised you, she said, using his middle name, which she only did when he was in deep trouble. And I have never been more ashamed of anything in my life. Silas slumped. The fight went out of him. He turned around and Officer Miller slapped the handcuffs on him. Click, click, the sound of justice. Julian tried to run. He bolted for the back door. Don't even think about it, another officer yelled, running around the side of the house. Julian stopped, raising his hands, sobbing like a toddler. I slid down the wall to the floor, the adrenaline finally fading, replaced by a wave of exhaustion and pain. Sarah was by my side instantly, checking my head, kissing my cheek. It's over, she whispered. We did it. I looked at my father being led out of his house, the house he had renovated with stolen money, the house he had tried to turn into a fortress of lies. He looked small, pathetic, and then I looked at Grandma Beatrice. She was standing tall, watching him go. She looked tired, but she looked free. The paramedics arrived a few minutes later. They loaded me onto a stretcher. As they wheeled me out, I saw the neighbors gathered on the sidewalk. I saw the flashing lights of the police cars reflecting off the shiny chrome of the Rolls-Royce fender visible through the now-open garage door. It was a spectacle. It was a tragedy. But it was also a victory. The hospital room was quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos of the last few hours. My arm was in a cast, a clean fracture of the radius. My back was bruised, but no spinal damage. I was lucky. Around 10 p.m., the door opened. It wasn't a doctor. It was Grandma Beatrice. Warren Healy was pushing her in a wheelchair, though I suspected she only agreed to the chair because she was tired, not because she couldn't walk. Look at you, she said, shaking her head. My hero in a hospital gown. How are you holding up? I asked. Better than your father, she said dryly. He's currently in a holding cell at the county jail. No bail until the arraignment on Monday. Flight risk, apparently. And Mom. Arrested too, Warren said. Obstruction of justice. And... He paused, pulling a file from his briefcase. We found something else. While the police were searching the house, they found a safe in the master bedroom closet. Martha gave up the combination pretty quickly. What was in it? Cash, Warren said. $34,000 in bundles. And jewelry. Not hers. Yours? Beatrice. Grandma nodded. My diamond brooch. My mother's pearl necklace. Things Silas told me were lost during the move to the facility. I felt a fresh wave of anger. She was in on it. The whole time. She was the accountant, Grandma said. Silas was the brute force. But Martha managed the books. She knew exactly where every stolen dollar went. She knew about the car. She knew about the fake trust modification. What about Julian? Sarah asked. She was sitting on the edge of my bed, holding my good hand. Julian is complicated, Warren said. He hasn't been charged with theft yet, but he's facing charges for harassment and potential conspiracy. But he has bigger problems. The loan sharks, I said. Warren nodded. He spilled everything to the police in exchange for protection. He owes nearly $80,000 to some very bad people in Atlantic City. That's why they needed the guardianship transfer immediately. The Sharks gave him a deadline, September 20th. So they were going to sell Lily to save Julian from his own gambling addiction. I said, the reality of it sinking in. They were going to sacrifice my daughter. Yes, Grandma said softly. They were. She reached out and took my hand. Her skin was paper thin, but her grip was warm. I need to apologize to you, Asher, for not seeing it sooner, for letting it get this far. You were locked up, Grandma, I said. You couldn't have known. I raised him, she said, looking away. I spoiled him too, you know. When Silas was young, I gave him everything he wanted. Maybe I created this monster. No, Sarah said firmly. Silas made his own choices. You are not responsible for his greed. Grandma smiled at Sarah. You found a good one, Asher. She's got a backbone. So what happens now? I asked. Now, Warren said, snapping his briefcase shut. We dismantle the empire. Over the next few days, I watched from the sidelines as Warren and the district attorney went to work. It was brutal and efficient. Silas was charged with elder abuse, grand larceny, fraud, assault, and reckless endangerment. The Rolls-Royce was seized as evidence of proceeds from crime. The renovations to the house were documented. The bank records were the nail in the coffin. Warren had compiled a spreadsheet that was a masterpiece of forensic accounting. It showed every transfer, every fake invoice, every withdrawal. The total amount stolen was $187,400 in cash, plus the $410,000 bond liquidation for the car. Over $500,000. But the most satisfying moment, the payoff I had been waiting for, came during the arraignment. I went. I had to see it. Silas walked into the courtroom in an orange jumpsuit. He looked deflated. Gone was the arrogance. Gone was the head of the household swagger. He looked like what he was, a petty thief who got caught. When the judge read the charges, Silas tried to speak. "Your Honor," he rasped. "I did it for my family." The judge, a stern woman with glasses on the end of her nose, looked down at him over her spectacles. "Mr. Chambers," she said, "pushing your son down a flight of stairs is not doing it for your family. Stealing from your mother is not doing it for your family. It seems the only person you were doing anything for was yourself." She set bail at $500,000. Silas didn't have it. His accounts were frozen. The house was being liened. He looked back at the gallery. He saw me. He saw Grandma Beatrice. He didn't see Julian. Julian wasn't there. He was in protective custody, singing like a canary to save his own skin. Silas's eyes locked with mine. For a moment I expected hate. Instead I saw pleading. "Asher," he mouthed. "Help me." I looked at him. I thought about the rusty bike. I thought about the student loans. I thought about him shoving me toward that staircase while holding my baby girl. I shook my head slowly, and then I turned my back on him. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. And it was the most necessary. We left the courthouse into the bright sunlight. Reporters were there. Local news loves a juicy family scandal involving a Rolls-Royce and a nursing home. "Mrs. Chambers, Mrs. Chambers." A reporter thrust a microphone at Grandma. "How do you feel about your son being denied bail?" Grandma stopped. She leaned on her cane. She looked right into the camera. "I feel," she said, "that justice is finally being served. And I feel that parents should teach their children that character matters more than cars. If I had taught my son that, we wouldn't be here today." She turned and walked to Warren's car. A queen leaving her court. The fallout was swift and absolute. Without Silas and Martha to prop him up, Julian's life disintegrated within 48 hours. The loan sharks, realizing there was no inheritance coming, started making threats. Julian, terrified, accepted a plea deal from the DA. He would testify against his parents in exchange for a lighter sentence on the harassment charges and placement in a witness protection program for a few months until the heat died down. But there was a condition Grandma Beatrice insisted on. "I will pay off his gambling debt," she told Warren, "directly to the creditors. I won't have my grandson killed, no matter how foolish he is. But in exchange, he goes to rehab. Inpatient. 6 months. And he signs away any claim to the estate. Permanently." Julian signed. He cried when he did it, but he signed. He was broken. Martha took a plea deal too. She pleaded guilty to conspiracy and receipt of stolen property. She got 18 months of probation and 500 hours of community service. She avoided jail time because she had no prior record and, frankly, because she turned on Silas. She testified that he had coerced her, that she was afraid of him. It was a lie mostly. I knew she was a willing participant. But seeing her reduced to picking up trash on the side of the highway in an orange vest felt like punishment enough. She lost her social standing, her church friends, her reputation. For a woman like Martha, that was worse than prison. Silas went to trial. He refused to plead guilty. His ego wouldn't let him. The trial lasted 3 days. I testified. Grandma testified. Patrice testified. The jury deliberated for 2 hours. guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to 6 to 10 years in state prison. After the sentencing, I went to the house one last time. It was being sold to pay back the stolen funds to Grandma's estate. I walked through the empty rooms. The furniture was gone. The expensive paintings were gone. It was just a shell. I walked into the kitchen. The granite countertops were still there, cold and shiny. I remembered sitting at this table, being told I wasn't good enough, being told I was invisible. I walked out to the garage. The Rolls-Royce was gone, towed away by the police impound. The oil stain on the floor was the only proof it had ever been there. I stood there for a long time. I realized that this house had never been a home. It had been a stage where my parents performed the role of a perfect family while rotting from the inside out. Asher. I turned. Sarah was standing in the driveway holding Lily. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "I'm just saying goodbye. To the house. To the ghost of who they wanted me to be," I said. "The invisible son. He doesn't exist anymore." We got in the car. As we drove away, I didn't look back. We moved Grandma Beatrice out of Sycamore Ridge the day after Silas was arrested. She moved into a beautiful assisted living community near our house, one she chose herself. But she didn't stay there long. 6 months later, Sarah and I bought a new house. It wasn't a mansion. It was a farmhouse with a wraparound porch and a big garden. We used my share of the recovered funds. Grandma insisted on giving me an early inheritance, to put a down payment on it. We built a suite on the first floor. For Grandma. She lives with us now. She helps Sarah in the garden. She reads stories to Lily. She's teaching me how to invest in real estate properly, without cheating or stealing. My wrist healed, though it aches when it rains. It's a reminder that family isn't about blood. It's about who catches you when you fall. And my father? He sits in a cell, telling anyone who will listen that he was framed, that his ungrateful son and senile mother conspired against him. He still believes his own story. He's the hero in his own tragedy. But I know the truth. And now, so do you. I look at Lily playing on the rug with Grandma Beatrice. The useless old woman and the burden of a child. They are the two most important people in my world. I didn't just get rid of the toxic expectations. I got rid of the fear. I am Asher Chambers. I am a father. I am a grandson. And I am finally completely visible. The days following the arrest were a blur of flashing lights, legal jargon, and a silence in my own head that I wasn't used to. For the first time in 34 years, the constant background noise of my family's expectations, the criticism, the comparisons, the demands, had been abruptly cut off. But silence can be loud. My lawyer, Warren Healy, was a shark in a tailored suit. He didn't just want a conviction. He wanted a complete dismantling of the lie my father had built. "We aren't just going for assault, Asher," Warren told me as we sat in his office 3 days after the incident. "We're going for the financial jugular. We're piercing the corporate veil of SC management. We're exposing every dime Silas stole." The first domino to fall was Julian. I hadn't seen my brother since the police dragged him out of the backyard. Sobbing. Warren arranged a meeting at the district attorney's office. I didn't have to go, but I needed to. I needed to see him without our parents looming over us. Julian sat at a metal table, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. He wasn't wearing his usual flashy clothes. He was in a gray sweatsuit provided by the county. He looked like a child who had lost his way. "Asher," he croaked when I walked in. He didn't look me in the eye. "Tell me the truth, Julian," I said, sitting across from him. "No more games. How deep are you in?" Julian broke. It wasn't a graceful confession. It was a dam bursting. He told us about the gambling debts that started in college. Debts Mom and Dad had quietly paid off by refinancing the house the first time. He told us about the loan sharks in Atlantic City who had threatened to break his legs if he didn't come up with 80 grand. Dad said he could fix it. Julian wept. He said if we got the guardianship, we could trigger the trust immediately. He said you wouldn't mind. He said you were manageable. Manageable? I repeated, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. Is that what I am to you? A resource to be managed. I'm sorry, Asher, Julian whispered. I was scared. They were going to kill me. So you were willing to let them destroy my daughter instead? Julian didn't answer. He just put his head in his hands. Julian took the plea deal. In exchange for testifying against Dad and Mom, he would receive a suspended sentence and mandatory placement in a long-term rehabilitation facility for gambling addiction. He also had to sign a document formally disclaiming any future interest in Grandma Beatrice's estate. When he signed that paper, I saw a physical weight lift off his shoulders. He wasn't the golden child anymore. He was just a guy with a problem, finally being forced to deal with it. Then came the trial of Silas Chambers. Dad refused to plead guilty. His narcissism wouldn't allow it. He truly believed he could charm a jury the way he had charmed the PDA, the neighbors, and his bosses for years. He hired a high-priced defense attorney, burning through the last of his legitimate savings. The trial began in November. The courtroom was packed. My story had made the local news, the Rolls-Royce inheritance scandal, and people were hungry for the drama. I took the stand on the second day. Mr. Chambers, the prosecutor asked, can you describe the events of September 19th? I looked at the jury, 12 strangers, and then I looked at my father. He was sitting at the defense table, wearing a suit that now hung loosely on him. He was glaring at me, mouthing the word traitor. I took a deep breath. My father demanded I give him my daughter. When I refused, he told me to get rid of it. And then he pushed me. I described the fall, the pain, the sound of Lily screaming. Then came the cross-examination. My father's lawyer tried to paint me as the jealous younger brother. Isn't it true, Asher, that you've always resented your brother's success? The lawyer asked, pacing in front of me. Isn't it true you staged this confrontation to humiliate your family? I almost laughed. Success? My brother is in court-ordered rehab. My father is on trial for stealing from his own mother. If that's success, then yes, I resent it. I resent that they tried to buy it with my daughter's safety. But the turning point, the moment the air left the room, was when Grandma Beatrice took the stand. They wheeled her in. She refused the ramp. She insisted on walking up the 2 steps to the witness box with her cane. She swore on the Bible with a firm hand. Mrs. Chambers, the prosecutor asked, did you authorize your son to purchase a 2023 Rolls-Royce Cullinan with funds from your bond account? Grandma adjusted her glasses. She looked directly at Silas. I have lived a modest life, she said, her voice clear and ringing. I clip coupons. I drive a 10-year-old Buick. I did not authorize my son to buy a rolling palace. And I certainly did not authorize him to imprison me in a nursing home to hide his theft. He says he was protecting you, the lawyer challenged her. He claims you were mentally unfit. Grandma smiled. It was a shark smile. I can recite the closing prices of the S&P 500 for the last 10 days. I can tell you the current yield on the 10-year Treasury note. And I can tell you exactly how much shame a mother feels when she realizes she raised a thief. She pulled a piece of paper from her pocket. This, she said to the judge, is a letter Silas wrote to me 20 years ago, asking for money. Again, kept it, because I knew, even then, that his hunger would never be satisfied. He didn't protect me. He consumed me. The jury didn't even need to deliberate for long. When the foreman stood up to read the verdict, I held Sarah's hand so tight I thought I might break her fingers. We find the defendant, Silas Gordon Chambers, guilty on all counts. Guilty. Elder abuse. Grand larceny. Assault. Reckless endangerment. Silas didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just slumped. The facade finally cracked. He looked at me, and for the first time I didn't see a monster. I saw a hollow man. A man who had spent his whole life chasing an image, only to have it collapse on top of him. The judge was merciless during sentencing. Mr. Chambers, you betrayed every trust placed in you. You betrayed your mother. You betrayed your sons. You betrayed the basic protective instinct of a grandparent. You are sentenced to 8 to 12 years in a state correctional facility. As the bailiffs clicked the handcuffs onto his wrists, Silas turned to the gallery. He looked for Mom, but she wasn't there. She was already serving her community service, picking up trash on the highway, too ashamed to show her face. He looked at me. "Asher," he said. It wasn't a command. It was a question. I stood up. I looked at the man who had pushed me down the stairs. The man who had made me feel invisible for 34 years. I didn't say anything. I just nodded once. A closing of the chapter. And then I turned my back and walked out of the courtroom, into the sunlight. The dismantling of the empire was swift after that. The house on Prospect Avenue, the house where I had grown up, where I had been ignored, where I had been assaulted, was seized by the state to pay restitution to Grandma's estate. I went to the auction. Sarah told me I didn't have to, but I needed to see it go. I stood in the back of the crowd as the auctioneer rattled off numbers. I watched strangers bid on the dining room table where the devil's proposal had been made. I watched a young couple bid on the house itself. They looked happy. They were talking about painting the nursery. "It's just a house," Sarah whispered to me. "No," I said. "It was a prison. And now it's just wood and brick." When the gavel fell on the final sale of the house, I felt a physical release in my chest. It was gone. The stage was burned down. We recovered about 70% of what Silas had stolen. The Rolls-Royce was sold at a police auction for a fraction of what he paid, ironically. The rest came from selling the house and liquidating Silas's retirement accounts. Grandma Beatrice took every penny of it. And then she did something that shocked us all. We were sitting in our small living room a week after the auction. Grandma placed a check on the coffee table. "This is for you," she said to me. I looked at the amount. It was substantial. Enough to pay off my student loans, pay off our car, and put a down payment on a real home. "Grandma, I can't," I said. "This is your money. You need it for your care." "I have plenty for my care," she said stubbornly. "The rentals are generating income again now that Silas isn't skimming off the top. This money, this is the inheritance they were fighting over. It was always poisoned, Asher. Silas made it toxic. I want you to take it and make it clean." She looked at Lily, who was playing with a set of wooden blocks on the rug. "Build a home where no child is invisible," she said. "That is my condition. Take the money, buy a house, and fill it with love. That is how you defeat Silas. You live well." I looked at Sarah. She was crying softly. "Okay," I said. "We'll do it." 6 months later, spring had arrived, and with it, a sense of rebirth that felt almost cliché, but I didn't care. I was living it. We found a farmhouse about 20 miles outside of the city. It wasn't a mansion. It didn't have marble floors or granite countertops. It had wide plankwood floors that creaked when you walked on them, a wraparound porch that needed painting, and 5 acres of land where the grass grew wild and green. It was perfect. Moving day was chaos, but the good kind. Not the secrets and lies kind of chaos I grew up with. Just boxes, pizza, and laughter. We built a suite for Grandma Beatrice on the ground floor. It had big windows that looked out onto the garden she was already planning. She sat in her chair, directing the movers with the authority of a general. "Careful with that dresser," she'd shout. "That's mahogany. It's older than you are." I was in the kitchen unpacking boxes. My wrist still ached sometimes when it rained, a dull throb where the bone had knitted back together. The doctor said I'd have full mobility, but the ache would probably always be there. I didn't mind. It was a reminder of what I survived, a reminder of what I refused to become. My phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Hello." "Hey, Asher." It was Julian. I froze, holding a stack of plates. "Julian, how are you?" "I'm okay," he said. His voice sounded different, less manic, deeper. "I'm at the halfway house now. I got a job." "Oh yeah. Landscaping. It's hard work. My back is killing me." He let out a short, dry laugh. "But I'm clean. 6 months sober today." "That's good, Julian. I'm glad." There was a long silence. "I wanted to call," he started, then stopped. I wanted to say, I know I can't fix it. I know I was a part of it. I wanted to say thank you. Thank you, I asked. For what? For not signing, he said. If you had given me Lily, if I had gotten that money, I would be dead, Asher. I would have gambled it all away or overdosed within a year. You saved my life by saying no. I leaned against the counter, looking out the window at Sarah and Lily in the yard. Sarah was blowing bubbles, and Lily was chasing them, her chubby legs pumping, shrieking with joy. You're my brother, Julian, I said. I didn't do it to save you. I did it to save her. But I'm glad you're still here. I'm not going to ask to see her, Julian said quickly. I know I lost that right, but maybe someday, if I stay clean. Someday, I said. Not now, but someday. We hung up. It wasn't a full reconciliation. It wasn't a Hallmark movie ending. But it was real, and that was enough. That evening, after the boxes were unpacked and the pizza was eaten, I sat on the porch swing with Grandma Beatrice. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. You know, Grandma said, rocking gently, I used to worry about you, Asher. Why? I asked. Because I was the quiet one? Because you were the one who took it, she said. You took the scraps. You took the insults. You just kept your head down and worked. I worried that you didn't have any fight in you. I worried that Silas had broken your spirit. She turned to look at me, but I was wrong. You weren't weak. You were just waiting for something worth fighting for. I had to protect them, I said. That's the difference, she said. Silas fought for things. You fought for people. That is why you are sitting on this porch and he is sitting in a cell. I thought about my father then. I wondered what he was doing at that exact moment. Was he staring at a concrete wall? Was he telling his cellmate about the Rolls-Royce he used to have? Was he still the hero of his own delusional story? I realized I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I didn't care what my father thought. His approval, which I had craved for so long like a drug, meant nothing. His disapproval meant even less. He was just a memory, cautionary tale. Daddy! Lily came running up the steps, her face sticky with ice cream. Sarah followed her, laughing. She wants you to push her on the swing, Sarah said. I stood up. My back twinged, my wrist ached, but I picked up my daughter. She felt solid and heavy and real in my arms. Ready to fly? I asked her. Fly! She screamed. I put her on the swing. I pushed. She went higher and higher, laughing into the twilight. I looked at Sarah. She smiled at me, a look of pure, unadulterated love. I looked at Grandma Beatrice, closing her eyes and enjoying the breeze. I realized then that the inheritance wasn't the money. It wasn't the house. It wasn't the status. The inheritance was this ability to break the cycle. This ability to choose love over control. This ability to be visible to the people who matter. My father tried to push me down so he could climb up. He didn't realize that you can't build a legacy on broken bones. I gave Lily another big push. She squealed. Higher, Daddy. Higher. As high as you want, baby, I said. The sky is the limit. And for the first time in my life, I believed it. If there is one thing I want you to take away from my story, it is this. Toxic family members do not deserve your loyalty just because they share your blood. We are taught from a young age that family is everything. But that phrase is often weaponized by abusers to keep us in line. My father used family as a shield to hide his greed and a sword to attack my boundaries. He thought he owned me. He thought my child was his property. It took me 34 years and a broken wrist to realize that your real family are the people who protect you, not the ones who prey on you. Standing up to a parent is one of the hardest things a person can do. It goes against our biological programming, but sometimes it is the only way to survive. If you are the invisible child, the scapegoat, or the one always asked to sacrifice for the golden child, please hear me. You are worthy. You are not an extension of your parents' ego. You have the right to say no. You have the right to protect your peace, your money, and your children. And remember, justice might be slow, but the truth has a way of coming out. My father built a castle on a foundation of lies, and it only took one brave grandmother and one refusal to bring it all crashing down. I want to hear from you guys. What is the most important boundary you've ever had to set with a family member? Did you ever have to say no to something major to save yourself? Or, if this story resonated with you and you're glad that justice was finally served, just comment the word good down below. Let's fill the comments with positivity to drown out the memory of people like Silas. Thank you for listening to my story. Stay safe, stay strong, and never let anyone make you feel invisible.